An entire solar system of places to hole away in, and the big guy chooses Utah. Well, look who it is. Weren't you scurrying off to stop Y2K or something? No, that hasn't happened yet. Or it already happened? Or maybe it's happening right now? I don't know. Eternalism, am I right? Don't care. Why are you here? I need a farmer. The best farmer. Well, you just missed her. Cora's off to some cat show on Neptune. Yeah, whatever, man. It's not like... The power strength cap isn't real. Then that would mean... Yep, pack your things. The rest of the gang's already waiting. Also, I got you a little welcome back present. You dorks in your fashion frame. You see? Eye holes are totally your style. Less talking, more farming. So, long time no farm, huh? I'll admit, ever since I started working on Atlas, The Art of the Money Punch, I intended to do a follow-up video, just to make absolutely sure I've ironed out all the loose ends and inconsistencies with my work over the last 2 farming videos. So, let's hop to it. First off, yes, this is going to be another video talking about resource farming with Atlas, since I believe he genuinely is one of the most underrated and possibly most powerful farming warframes. But unlike the last video in the series where we worked solo, I now have a team of hired goons who I helped to tailor their loadouts to my exact specifications with one goal in mind: boosting Atlas's power as high as it could possibly go. Since Orgaze, the farming augment associated with Atlas's Petrify ability, scales off of power strength, despite having a lackluster base drop rate. But that's the question, right? Does amping up Atlas's power strength beyond 400%, the required amount to reach 100% extra loot chance on Orgaze, actually give any benefit? Sources are divided on this one, and by that I mean I desperately want it to be true, while everyone online says it isn't. But I actually couldn't find any solid evidence either way. Thankfully, Helminth came to the rescue, again. By the way, did you know that different warframes have different probabilities of showing up as part of Helminth's invigorations? Yeah, most frames sit at a neutral probability, but more meta frames like Saren and Volt are at a half probability, while sleeper picks like Banshee, Nyx, and surprise surprise, Atlas, sit at double probability. Gauss is all alone at 3/4, he knows what he did. But regardless, I redeemed my 10 Invigorations rewards card and gave my already juiced Atlas another free 200% power strength. This meant that once we got Molt augmented online, we would be sitting at just over 600% power strength, or 150% drop chance on Orgaze. You know the drill at this point. I don't think I'll ever need Orkin cells ever again, but we're going back to Steelpath Gabby anyways, with both resource boosters activated. Our last run with a 400% power strength, or 100% drop chance Atlas, got 32 Orkin cells. So if Orgaze truly isn't limited to a 100% drop chance max, then we should be seeing something like 45 Orkin cells, and... oh. I'm not crazy here, right? This looks almost exactly like a 50% increase in loot from a 50% increase in power strength. I know there's the possibility that I got really insanely lucky with Smeedakavat drops, but for now, I'm inclined to move on to our next stage of testing, raising that power strength as high as it could possibly go. But first, an intermission. No, I'm not sponsored or anything, but I feel like if this is truly to be my last farming video, I've got some more stuff I want to touch on / go back to. You know, really make sure I've covered all my bases here. So first things first, let's go back to where it all began, the farm max and grind set, where I said something along the lines of, Atlas's Petrify only works with Hydroid's tentacles when they land the killing blow on a stone target, since you can't petrify held enemies. This was entirely wrong. You see, when Atlas goes to petrify enemies held by Korra or Hydroid, they won't visually change, but they will still drop rubble. This signifies that they are in fact petrified, and Orgaze's loot drop bonus does in fact apply to them. However, if Atlas petrifies an enemy first, and then Hydroid or Korra tries to pick them up, then they won't get picked up, huh? Well, okay, I guess at some point between the original farming video and now, DE changed Hydroid and Korra so that their ults can actually pick up stone enemies. I won't say that I was solely responsible for this change, but I will imply it. So, Atlas, in fact, can play nice with all the other farming warframes, and given everything we already know about him, he can probably also be a real asset to the team. Although, do you really even need Atlas? If you're a sick, vindictive fuck and don't even care about that Atlas you selflessly rescued from the Jordas Golem, you can feed him to your helmet, then unlock Petrify, and by extension, or Gaze to put on literally any Warframe of your choice. Pretty amazing, right? Well, it gets even better. If you're a hard enough dude to give up your frame's ultimate ability, you can subsume Orgaze onto your 4th ability slot and make use of Precision Intensify, a variant of the regular Intensify that only affects your 4th ability and gives 3 times the power strength. Some candidates for this ability include Petrify Excalibur with Slash Dash. You know, you turn those baddies into stone and then you wait patiently for 10 seconds as you kill them all. Or maybe Petrify Nidus, who can clump an entire room together for easy stoning. We've also got Petrify Protea, who's already getting rid of her 4 in most scenarios, so you might as well put some farm in there. Plus, she can also use her passive to get extra potent Orgaze procs. Speaking of subsuming Petrify, let's talk about the most popular candidate, Petrify Necros. I do not care for Petrify Necros. Our little Necromancer here is already squishy enough with his base stats, abilities, and Despoil literally just leeching his health all the time. He really does not need a 3rd augment mod taking up space that could be used instead for survivability. I guess you could use Orgaze to replace his 4 and then just not worry about Shield of Shadows at all, but I feel like you're really crippling yourself just for the ability to have multiple drop chance boosting abilities on one Warframe. Besides, you can just get a friend to play a different farming Warframe while you stick with Atlas. Huh? What's that? Really? None in their entire time playing. No friends? For 10 whole years? Ugh. That's rough, buddy. Conclusion, Petrify Necros is good if you have no friends. But despite all that, I still believe that, surprise surprise, the best Warframe to use with Petrify is Atlas, because in addition to it being a loot and crowd control ability, Petrify gives Atlas Rubble, which can increase his armor and heal him. Petrify also has 2 additional effects, increasing enemies' damage vulnerability to all types by 50%, and also causing them to take increased damage from landslides. So, not only do you get a defensive benefit, Atlas is able to use Landslide to drop just about any enemy in the game with just 1 or 2 punches. It's at this point I should mention that, as many people pointed out, there is one more factor you can take advantage of when selecting your mission to quite literally quadruple your drops: Fisher missions. Each relic opened on a Fisher mission gives one of 5 buffs: 25% extra affinity, credits, resources, and resource drop chance. And every 5th reward is a relic that increases in quality. Then the loop repeats, with the boosters maxing out at plus 200% after 19 rewards. Depending on your chosen mission type, that could be just over an hour and a half in a survival mission, 95 waves in a defense mission, or about 7.5 minutes in Void Cascade, give or take. And I mean, I get the appeal, right? If you get lucky enough for a Void Fisher for an endless mission that's anything but defense, and it appears exactly on the location you need to farm a very specific region resource that you really want, why not take it? Well, I didn't get lucky. So that's all the housekeeping handled, right? Now, like all other Warframe content creators, I found myself at a crossroads. As we previously went over, Atlas now works with Hydroid and Korra, and by that I mean Atlas always worked with Hydroid and Korra, and I was the dumb. So we can just do a repeat of the initial farming setup. Necros, Hydroid, Ivara, and then just slot Atlas in there so he just blasts enemies with Petrify while they're in Hydroid's tentacles. And that's the end of it, right? But I don't know. After experiencing just how much raw, unadulterated swag Atlas can put out on his own, I find myself wanting more. Also, a problem I realized I had with this setup after playing Atlas was, you're doing a lot of waiting. And enemies seem to just be real contrarians because when you want nothing more than for them to step into your kill box, they'll just mill around outside. This can be mitigated with stuff like Furliak pods for infested enemies or Magus Anomaly on your operator, but it still just feels like breaks in what you're wanting this setup to do, which is kill an endless stream of enemies just barreling into your no fun allowed room, Orcs Must Die style. So, what else can we do? We have 3 other player slots to work alongside Atlas to create a, let's say, more dynamic farming setup. Your first thoughts might be, oh, Necros, Korra, Mag, right? But I have an alternate hypothesis. Remember at the beginning of this video where I proved... Hey guys, Zagma from the future here. I just wanted to hold true to the scientific method and, reiterate that one mission and its ensuing results don't necessarily prove that Orgaze's power scaling is uncapped, because, I mean, after all, RNG is random. It's just, you know, I feel like the appropriate thing to say is that the results just highly support my original hypothesis. Okay, thanks, bye. Absolutely proved beyond a reasonable doubt. Absolutely confirmed that Orgaze's power scaling is uncapped, and I'm objectively correct about everything forever, and also me from the future is a loser. What if we built our team comp around boosting ability strength? I'm talking Equinox to spam Provoke, giving out a flat strength boost, and a Parasitic Link Nidus, giving out an overall multiplier to Atlas's total power strength. As for the fourth slot, yeah, just bring Necros along. I mean, he is the farming frame after all, and he can do his thing without being tied to one place. However, I do also want to see how Atlas performs as part of a more traditional farming squad. So here's what I decided to do. Since I'm nothing, if not a man of science, we'll do an experiment. 2 runs of a mission, Steel Path, every booster enabled. 1 run with the safe, traditional farming team, Atlas, Hydroid, Necros, and Ivara, compared with the Giga-based Atlas maxing Loadout, where the main objective is to just raise Atlas's ability strength as high as it can possibly go, and collect our loot that way. Through this, I hope to finally make my point, of Atlas being an excellent farming Warframe, maybe even the best? Through fair experimentation and comparison. By the end, I hope we can have a greater understanding of Atlas, and farming, and the game of Warframe as a whole. I hope you'll join me, Zachmo, on my ultimate journey, the ultimate farming experience. Nay, this is not an experience. This is my... As for actual individual loadouts, here's what I've used on Atlas. Power strength, literally all the way, from Umbral mods to Blind Rage, Molt Augmented, and especially the 5 Tauforged red Archon shards I've shoved onto him. This setup is designed to literally just get every single strength advantage possible out of Atlas, while also having the barest amount of quality of life to keep you afloat. As for second Arcane, I use Battery, which couples with Atlas's juiced armor stat to make sure we don't need to install Primed Flow, and then we can put on Continuity instead to make Nourish and our Landslide combo meter last a bit longer. You could also use Arcane Energize if you're one of those Giga God gamers immune to burnout who has it maxed, but then you need to use Flow if you don't want your ability casting experience to be comparable to squeezing a brick out of a tube of toothpaste. Also, I'm running Power Donation. Every other member of my squad is also running Power Donation. This lets us all get plus 60% power strength, which makes Atlas beefier, our 2 strength boosting frames boost strength even harder, and Necros, I guess, you know, his shadows have more health or something. Growing power would have been the more ideal aura mod to run, but since my friends all have real-life jobs and commitments, they didn't have it. And I'm not nearly mean enough to drag them through the Silver Grove experience to get copies of their own. And despite ideally never letting up on the 1 key, Atlas does sometimes require a little bit of help to get going. Because of that, I use the Prisma Gorgon, with Incarnon Genesis, of course. This is an otherwise unremarkable rifle, save for the fact that it can use the Metamorphic Magazine mod, something I had no idea existed before researching the Atlas farming video. In addition to almost doubling your magazine size and max ammo capacity, hitting an enemy with 20 bullets will turn them into stone. This allows them to drop rubble when killed by Atlas, but unfortunately doesn't convey Petrify's damage vulnerability or the loot boosting chance of Orgaze. Don't be scared of the 20 hits thing either, since each instance of multi-shot counts as its own hit. Overall, this weapon serves to provide a steady stream of rubble to build you up or sustain yourself if you ever find yourself in between explosive outbursts of landslide chains at the moment. As for secondaries, I think the most optimal play might be the Grimoire due to the power strength and energy generation utility it can provide. Unfortunately, I hate grinding mirror defense, so I have 0 tomb mods. So here's my bootleg solution. Cyanoid Gamma Core for Cephalon Suda's Entropy effect, which restores and increases your maximum energy when it activates. As for melee weapons, this one is somewhat up for personal preference, as long as your personal preference involves some kind of Incarnon weapon. Atlas's Landslide, being a pseudo-exalted weapon, will fully inherit any base stat increases from any Incarnon weapon. Ceramic Dagger has a base crit chance increase of 30%, which is the highest crit chance offered by any Incarnon weapon. Hence, I use the Ceramic Dagger. This thing also has a nifty Incarnon upgrade where each primary weapon kill, up to 100, will increase your base combo by 1, which is insanely good for having full uptime for your Incarnon form, and it synergizes with our Gorgon. Speaking of combo uptime, I like to use Naramon as my focus school thanks to its ability to maintain your combo count. Trust me, you really don't want that number to drop at an inopportune time when your primary way of building it back up is 1 to 2 punches per rune. If you're really hurting for energy, I could see swapping schools to Xeneric, but I really don't see a reason to use any school beyond those 2. And of course, companions. Spare parts on a Sentinel is a classic combination and has consistent, controllable output. Nautilus is the greatest Sentinel of all time, of course, and Cordon is a very great synergy for petrifying huge groups of enemies. On paper, in reality, I find that Cordon just bunches enemies up around and behind me, including already frozen enemies, moving them out of my way. This can be anathema to Atlas's playstyle of just barreling forward no matter what, but if you can stomach the waiting, good on you. Another option might be Death Cube, who can use Energy Generator along with Duplex Bond to make absolutely sure you never run out of energy. Since we're using Necros on our team, you should stay the hell away from Chesaku Bros, since they steal his corpses for much less of loot bonus. But I mean, come on, we play Warframe. We know what the true best option is. Gambling. The Smita Kavat truly is a wonder of RNG, and I feel really bad that I sort of just glossed over it in my last two videos. So here it is, my tangent to talk about the absolute wonders of Charm science. You see, Charm has not one, but two separate resource boosting abilities. The first, referred to as Rare Resource by the wiki, was initially all I thought Smita was, randomly generating an instance of the area's rarest resource for you specifically. But there is another, Double Pickups and Affinity, which does exactly what it says on the tin. Double XP and resources for 2 whole minutes. The astute among you might have noticed something though. Charm has a chance to activate every 27 seconds. Yes to exactly what you are thinking. If you get insanely lucky enough to get multiple double resource and affinity buffs on top of each other, they do stack. Multiplicatively, I might add. So if you're somehow lucky enough to get 3 buffs at the same time, that's 8 times the resources you can pick up. However, you can make a bit of your own luck with Tech Enhance, an innocuous set mod that increases Kavat ability duration by 30%, raising Charm's buff duration to 156 seconds, allowing for 6 instances of double resources instead of 4. In an ideal scenario, that's a total of times 128 resources. Statistically unlikely, incredibly so. But, I mean, for all you know, today could be the luckiest day of your life, but you'll never know unless you start gambling. As for the rest of the squad, they're mostly set up just to buff the hell out of Atlas and do their best not to die while doing it. First up is Equinox, optimized to basically just have Provoke up at all times. This means building for strength to optimize the buff amount, and efficiency, since Provoke drains a fixed amount of energy for each ability cast within its radius, which, when Atlas is involved, can be a lot. Ability range isn't going to be that important since Equinox's whole job is to just stick glued to Atlas the entire mission. Probably not that envious of a task, but I wouldn't know. I was having too much fun playing Atlas. Next up is Nidus, whose entire setup is just based around using Parasitic Link. For those who aren't aware, this ability is insane. On the surface, it just looks like a way for Nidus to create another source point for his Virulence ability, either on a player or enemy, but beneath the hood, this thing is weird. You see, if he uses it on an ally, Nidus boosts both his own and the ally's power strength by a percentage amount that also scales off of his own ability strength. This means that with, around 310% ability strength, which our Nidus has, our Atlas is getting a 77.5% extra ability strength buff on top of his maximum possible ability strength. So 480% ability strength, now that's 852% ability strength. It's actually nuts. What's also nuts is how Nidus has no shields, and therefore has no shield getting capabilities, meaning that in exchange for harnessing the raw, untapped power of the sun in your Warframe builds, you also need to make really sure you don't make a wrong step into an infestation cloud and become character development for your friends. Last but not least, Necros, who's really only here because he's just the easiest farming frame to add to the lineup. You know the standard Necros build. That mainly consists of using Despoil, Health Conversion, and Shield of Shadows. You might say, oh, but if you use Shield of Shadows, you're eating into the spawn limit and reducing your maximum farm. To which I respond, nuh-uh. I actually believed this for like 8 years though, too. Whoops. Hey, Giggly Greg 43. I'm really sorry for flaming you back in 2016 for using Shadows of the Dead in a survival mission. I really hope you'll forgive me, man. I'm so fucking sorry. Necros is essentially the least intrusive farming frame to include in the lineup. And ideally, he'll just be following the carnage and scrounging that extra little bit of loot from all the petrified and shattered enemies that Atlas leaves in his wake. So that's our setup, right? We've got our builds, plural, together, and now we can go out and farm everything, right? Well, no, but also sort of yes. You see, it's no secret that farming abilities don't work on a lot of things in Warframe. But again, in the interest of this being the last farming video, let's just go over what you can't farm, which will give us an idea of what we can farm. So first off, farm maxing, TM, only works on things that drop from enemies. Shocker, I know. So that's no mission completion rewards, crate drops, open world resources, void traces, etc. But even then, farm maxing will not help you acquire things like boss drops from both mission and open world bosses, specific enemy rewards like Vitus Essence, Steel Essence, Thrax Plasm, or Arcanes. What you can get, though, are, of course, credits, region resources, mods, Riven Slivers, and things like toroids. Nice. So, I know what you're already thinking. I can see it in your eyes. How do I make platinum with this? Now, cards on the table, I'm not much of a platinum trader, but I feel like you'd probably be able to make a bit of a killing by farming for rare mods. Now, of course you're not going to be getting stuff like galvanized or primed mods out of this, but you'd be surprised at just how many people on Warframe Market are willing to pay like 9 to 20 platinum for a mod that you might just have dozens of. You could also use the approximately 20 billion Riven Slivers you collect to exchange with Paladino for Riven mods, but that's got a weekly cap to it. I don't know, those are my two best suggestions for plat farming. While I do feel like it pales in comparison to my own farming method, starting a Warframe YouTube channel and then funneling all my profits back into the game like some kind of Ouroboros, this method sure is a way to get items that you can then exchange for currency. But, I mean, hey, if you've got a better idea, let me know in the comments. Just know that it'll be adopted by a bunch of people and then it'll be, you know, stolen and everything you try to farm for will be worth less. But hey, that's the cost of economics, I suppose. With all that done, we were almost ready to venture forth. But one question remained. What were we gonna farm? I genuinely think I've farmed enough Oricon cells to literally never need to focus farm them ever again. And maybe it's not as much as those of you in the comments though, who've said they farmed up 5k without even trying. But I was convinced we could put our time into farming something else. Something rare. Something needed. Something we wouldn't come into possession of otherwise. The humble mutagen sample. The infested version of the pain-in-my-ass resources that are relatively easy to come by, but also have annoying counterparts that need to be crafted from bunches of them in order to make several important weapons and warframes. But that's not why we're here. Let's talk about... The HEMA is Nidus' signature burst-firing rifle that's characterized by having no ammo reserves, and instead sucking the lifeblood right out of your arm. It's cool though, you get lifesteal on headshots. This weapon is surprisingly decent. It's got great status chance, innate viral damage, and even serviceable crit. Wait, what is this? What the hell is this? This is just the modding in a minute script. Who cares about any of this? Look, the most known thing about the HEMA will never be its stats, or anything related to its gameplay. It will always be its gargantuan research cost at the Dojo Biolab, requiring 5,000 mutagen samples to complete, at base, for a ghost clan. A moon clan, on the other hand, would need 500,000 mutagen samples to complete it. So, yeah, you can probably see why this thing is the one unresearched item in so many clans' labs. So, we had our target item. All that was left was to pick out the best location for it. We settled on Terra Room, the only derelict survival node in the game. I debated waiting for a lucky Void Fisher on Eris, but nothing showed up, and I only had my squad for a limited time, so we just sent it on the derelict and... Wait, what? What's that? Is that a Dark Sector survival? On Eris? Yeah, no, that's a Dark Sector survival, with a plus 30% resource drop chance bonus. Yeah, I'm pissed, what am I gonna tell the viewers? Oricon cell farming? Really? Fine, whatever, just roll the next segment. So, Derelict Survival produces a healthy mix of Oricon cells alongside your mutagen samples. While, if you really just want to farm mutagen samples, just head to, Zabala on Eris. If this were a standard farm maxing video, I'd be a little bit more miffed about this, but the reason we're here now, other than unlocking the coolest gun of all time, is just proving the efficacy of pure Atlas farming versus a more traditional farming crew. The plan was this: 2 instances of 30-minute derelict survival, on Steel Path, with resource and drop chance boosters in play. I got the resource blessing, by myself I might add, since I finally hit MR30 between last video and now. We would then have 2 similar points of data in the form of mutagen samples collected to compare and make conclusions on. And we would be able to truly see if Atlas was more viable than regular farming. Sorry, if the data supports Atlas being a more viable choice than regular farming comps. Overall, the experience went well. None of our frames were dying too much, and the supporters were able to do their job of supporting the breadwinner, me. we ended up reaching a final drop chance on Orgaze of about 230%, which would imply a total power strength of 920. And boy howdy, did it feel like I was playing a Warframe with 920 power strength. An optimal Incarnon form boosted max combo landslide punch on a petrified enemy was doing somewhere in the ballpark of about 44 million damage, and the mutagen samples were just rolling in. Overall, our efforts with Team Atlas netted us 8 Orokin cells, which, I mean, cringe, and 480 mutagen samples. Unrelated, but we also got like 240,000 nanospores, which I checked and is like 1/4 the amount you need to craft literally everything in the game requiring nanospores. Just a funny observation. Next up was our Hydroid-centric team comp, and it was okay. I talked about it before, but the enemies really did not want to step into the tentacle field, which hurt our progression speed a lot. Even if we did have an overall higher raw drop chance boosting rate. The end of this mission here saw us collecting 30 Orokin cells and 370 samples, which, honestly, given how much of the mission was spent straight up just not killing dudes, I'd say is a really good number. Overall, I'm not comfortable saying that Atlas farming is better than our full drop chance comp, namely because of the flow of enemies. For some reason, I feel like whenever you set up any kind of killing area in Warframe, be that Hydroid's tentacles or a strangle dome, whatever, enemies will just go out of their way to avoid getting close to you. This could also have been pets or enemies getting distracted by our Ivara. Whatever it is, I think we could have done much better. But still, we got like 3/4 of the resources of the Atlas comp with a much worse performance, so that goes to say quite a bit about this thing's maximum potential. Something I am confident in saying, though, is that it's definitely easier to reach peak performance with the Atlas min-maxing comp. Since you're only focusing around one Warframe, as long as Atlas is getting Petrify casts on most enemies, you're golden. This setup is also super mobile, with Atlas being able to stone a room, obliterate it with 1 or 2 punches, and then move on. All everyone else has to do is keep up. So, the question then becomes, right? Where is Atlas better? Either farming on his own, or with a bunch of squad mates boosting his potential, or as a part of a squad? What gets you the better resources? And my answer to that is yes. Okay, I know that's not what you wanted to hear, right? But there's different applicable scenarios for each one, right? Because if you're running solo, I think Atlas, with the speed, survivability, and overall just damage he can offer, is a very good choice. But if you're running in a squad, then he starts to do a little bit less, right? Atlas's whole thing is collecting massive amounts of rubble, and in order to collect those massive amounts of rubble, Atlas needs to basically be in charge of the whole situation. When he becomes a bit of a second fiddle to like Hydroid or Korra, then he just sort of feels like he's standing around and you're wasting your time. Then I feel like you might be better served by subsuming Petrify onto another Warframe. So, if you like playing Atlas, play him by himself or with a team around him. If you care about farming, incorporate him into the team and you don't have to do as much work to absolutely max out your Atlas. I think that's a safe conclusion to make. So, after all that, do I recommend farming Atlas? Of course, 110%, 150%. I think everyone should at least try the farming Atlas playstyle, because I have had so much fun with it. Maxing it out, building it, sort of working around it, learning how to use it. Even without a full team comp backing him up, Atlas can still be the best solo farming Warframe if you invest into him, thanks to his crazy AoE damage and survivability. In addition to having the best resource drop chance boosting ability in the game, don't at me, he's also just good in other situations. I know this holds true for literally every other quote-unquote farming Warframe nowadays, including Hydroid since he got his rework, but I find Atlas to be a very non-intrusive way to just do farming, while you're also just blowing up rooms of enemies, building your rubble, and having fun doing other things. But hey, whether you're an Atlas maxer, a Strangle Dome enjoyer, a full drop comp advocate, or a solo farmer, we can all agree on one thing. At least they're not petrifying Necros. And hey, we finally got our Hema blueprint researched. Now we're absolutely ready for 1999 and... Wait, hold on. Infested Liches? Kuva Hema? No, this can't be. No, wait.
After all that, people can just get it for free?
Step into the night where all the stars are bright. We're back again.